Hey there, friends. Welcome back. So, how do you become an interesting person? I wasn't sure how to even start this video. I honestly just got home from a long road trip. It was like 6 hours there and 6 hours back just to do like an hour of work on a tiny home we'd built. But it was out in John Day, so we got up early and came back home, stayed at a motel last night, and I just got home and my first thought was I wanted to share some of my, you know, some of the awesome pictures I got on my trip, but something popped into my head, and I thought about being interesting and how funny it is that people want to be interesting, right? And there's this the old joke, the most interesting man in the world, right? Uh, and something occurred to me while I was thinking about this, and I thought, how do you become an interesting person? And I thought, it's very simple, by being an interested person. And I further chewed on that kind of, the philosophy of interest, and quickly realized that interesting can be, it's often taken as an adjective, right? If I'm not mistaken, describing how this person is interesting. But you wouldn't say that this person is, like, for example, when you say this person is walking or running or smoking, then it's actually a verb, right? An action, if I'm not mistaken. So, interesting means that you are actively being interested. Okay? That makes sense. Interesting. So, how to become interesting? Well, you have to interest. You have to interest yourself. You have to actually go out and seek knowledge and ideas and information to try to process the accumulated wisdom that we all have. I should say maybe we process the ideas we have and that becomes wisdom. But at any rate, everything that we learn in our lives needs to ferment. And this is something that's often overlooked by especially younger people. I know this as a person who was formerly a young person, and I'm well aware of the fact that when you have an idea in your head, it seems like the right idea. It seems like this is what's true, this is what's right, this is what I need to stand for, fight for, or, kind of a fuck the world attitude. And then you find that other people have already processed this, that people have already moved from A to B, and you start thinking deeper. Well, then what else is there? And the more knowledge that you seek in your life and the older you get, the more interesting life can become, or the less interesting. And this is important because there are two types of people out there. There are seekers and hiders. And I know that sounds very surface, if you will, that, of course it's more complex than that. All of us seek certain things and hide from others. I know that. But there are people out there who are content with what they think they know. There are folks out there who, by the time that they are 18 years old, they think they know how the whole world works. You think of a Mormon, for example. I've had lots of them come to my door, and I invite them in, and we talk about beliefs. I have their Bible here, and I have little notes taken to recite back to them, and questions about Joseph Smith and the plates and all these things. But the point here is that they're very interesting people, but their interest is limited to a belief system. Anybody who is religious will limit their interest to things within the framework of that which they are part of or want to be part of. Often, this gets to the point where others will, let me put it this way, any belief system, religion, scientific, otherwise, that tells you don't look outside the box and don't look at alternative theories is in its own right taking you away from the interest. It's removing you from being interesting because you're not interesting yourself in other things that you can't explain or understand. We want to build a picture of how the world works. And the fact is that not one of us, Not one of you, none of us, are completely able to do that, are properly armed and have the right information and knowledge to make an assessment about how the world works. At least being, drawing conclusions. So, in that sense, I believe that we all are equally I should say, we're all on equal footing and we all have equal stake in the game. This is why I always say that no religion has a monopoly on truth. No belief system or political system has a monopoly on truth. No matter the more extreme that you are in your beliefs, the less you really understand. That's how I feel that the world, is much more complicated than we give it credit for. Maybe not the world itself, but the world we've created. And that humans are pretty petty in the things that we find interest in. There are people out there who are constantly seeking knowledge, even if it conflicts with what they want to believe. Cognitive dissonance, you call it whatever you want. Yeah, but we all have these moments of confusion and ambivalence. And I guess that should be the word of the day. Ambivalence is great. It's somewhat like cognitive dissonance. That means that you have two conflicting opinions in your mind at one time. Ambivalence is when you're unsure what to believe because there's so much confusion on both sides. And that is what makes you interesting. Not the fact that you've picked one side, not the fact that you've chosen and said this is the way things should be and this is how people should be, but to be constantly curious and interested in how things morph and change over time and to be able to accept the world for what it is, a confusing mess. And I love it that way. It's the way it was meant to be. So that's my ramble for the moment. I'll leave it there. Thanks for coming along. Be sure to check out my podcast, 15-Minute Free Thinking. And looks like this will be about 7:19, just like my name.